Hello my wonderful artists, and welcome to this drawing tutorial about 3 of the grazers you may find on the African savannah. They are the giraffe, the zebra and the elephant. Let's jump right in by starting with the giraffe first. You're going to be working on drawing paper with a sketching pencil. You might use a 2B or a 4B for this activity. We always start our drawings based on shapes, plain basic two-dimensional shapes. For our giraffe's head, we're going to start with an oval shape that's going to take up most of our paper, but leaving a bit of room at the top for the horns and the ears and a little bit more space down the bottom for his neck. Draw a circle in the bottom part of the oval, touching the base of it. Add 2 small rectangles at the top of the oval and 2 large triangles on either side of those. Coming back inside the oval, just below those large triangles, draw 2 smaller triangles pointing in. The 2 lines down underneath the triangle will locate the neck. Now that we have laid out some basic shapes in a light pencil, we can go back and draw our actual drawing or picture over the top of these shapes. They help us to locate the different parts of our giraffe. Start at the top of the head where the 2 rectangles are and curve those rectangles to form the horns. Curve that line into the ear on the left and the right hand side, and then take that curved line out, basing it loosely around the triangle shape. Do that on both sides. One thing we're doing is we're taking those rigid geometric shapes and softening them with curves. Now come back again on those 2 lines that you've drawn for the top of the ear on each side and add a second line. So you're doubling back to give it a 3-dimensional look, like the ear is curving a little bit. Join the 2 ears in the center just below the horns with a little peak or a little pointy bit at the top of the head. Bring the forehead around as a curve and curve it into the eyelids on both sides, softening those pointy angles of the triangle. Add in a top eyelid, curving again on either side, and of course our giraffes have lovely long eyelashes. Add the eyeballs in, which curve out on either side of the head. And now we're just going to pop down to the circle at the bottom of the oval, which is where we're going to locate the nostrils and mouth. Through the center of that circle, draw a bow shape. It's kind of like the shape of the top of a lip on a human. And square it up a little bit at the base, so by drawing a straight line. Repeat that bow shape again at the top, in the top half of that circle, and add those curves and tunnels to represent the 2 nostrils on either side. Now we're going to narrow down the cheeks. So coming from underneath the eyelids, we're going to come in on a much steeper angle to form the jaw. Don't worry about your pencil line shape underneath. When you're drawing in a very light pencil line underneath, it pretty much disappears once our drawing is finished. And then we're going to add the neck, curve the neck down from the head, pretty much staying on the lines that you drew before. Adding in the midline of the head, we're just going to draw the bridge of the nose as it connects to the forehead. Make 2 little marks on either side of the nostrils and connect it with a curve to the 2 little marks on either side of the horns. Just softly for now. Switching your pencil out for your marker, now with some confidence, draw in your animal. You're now really focusing on an animal drawing and ignoring the shapes that are underneath. Keeping those lines soft and curved. Complete all the details that you have drawn in with your pencil. Add some eye pupils to the eyes on both sides. And if you can, aim to keep a small white light spot inside those pupils. At this point, if there were any errors that you made, you can simply ignore those and draw the lines where you would like them to go. The marker is so much bolder than the pencil, and the eye won't even notice any errors in pencil that you ignored. Continuing on to the other side of the head, and really focusing on keeping your pen loose, your grip on your pen loose, and just flowing those lines, keeping them soft and curved, avoiding any harsh, strong, rigid angles. Finishing off those lovely eyelashes on the other side and curving around with the cheek, and then adding in your neck. There we go. Your drawing is now complete. We are going to elaborate with some details. So on the giraffe there is a very distinct skin pattern, and we're going to add a few of these to the cheeks. Not too many on the face, just a few, and very small out to either side. Then as you move down onto the neck, work in larger shapes. These are irregular rectangle type of shapes, more geometric but still soft on the corners, and you can start with some medium-sized ones just under the chin, and as you head or work your way down to the bottom of your page, slowly increase the size of these shapes as you're working. Sometimes there are irregular shapes that can lock together. The trick is to make sure that none of the shapes touch, that there is a gap between each of them, almost like irregular paving. There we go. Now I'm just using a pencil to draw a guideline for where I'm going to put the top of the mane. The mane is a little bit shorter, nearer to the head, and it gets a little bit longer as it goes down. Using a zigzag line, finish the top of the mane. Now we're moving into shading. So picking up your sketching or your art pencil again, most likely a 4B will be great for this. Use it to shade in the mouth area very, very lightly. So working just with the side of the lid, softly shade in the muzzle, and then add a little more pressure to shade around the edge of that muzzle. Give it some depth. Working up into the horn, same thing again, softly first and then more pressure as you colour in the base of each horn. Onto the centre of the face, once more, that soft pressure to colour in most of that midpoint of the face, that bridge, and then a little bit more pressure for a darker pencil result through the centre to make the face look like it's denting in. Moving into underneath the ears, underneath the top half of the ears, you are putting in some dark shadow cast on the inside of the ear from the top of the ear edge. Watch out that as you're working you're not smudging this shading around on your page, so every so often check underneath your hand to make sure you're not doing that. Use your pencil to shade in the eyeball again, thinking about how you could leave one tiny part on each eye white to show a reflection in the eye. Now with those little marks on the cheeks, super lightly with the ones closest to the middle of the face, and then getting a little bit darker, but not much, just a little bit darker towards the very edges of the cheeks. Now as we move down to the neck, the shapes right underneath the chin would be the darkest because there's shadow being cast onto the neck at this point, and you push really hard with your pencil to get that really dark tone of the pencil shading. As you then move down the neck, these shapes become softer and lighter, so you are applying less pressure with your pencil. Try and stay inside of those lines, of those shapes, as you're working your way down the neck of your giraffe. Here you can see how the pencil is starting to get a little bit lighter because that part of the neck is not underneath the chin, and your giraffe is ready. Now we're going to move on to our second animal. This is our elephant, and our elephant is structured mostly with squares. The first thing you need to do is super lightly draw a line across the center of your page, or a little bit above the center, doesn't really matter. Find the center point, and on either side of the center point, about the width of a finger, draw two lines matching each other on either side, and then connect them with diagonal lines pointing outwards. Basically, it'll end up being a hexagon made up out of two trapeziums joined on their long edges. Above the top one, draw a square shape, and beneath the bottom one, drop down two long lines. The square is where we're going to locate the face, and the two long lines underneath is where we're going to locate the trunk. To the side of those two long lines, add an upside down half triangle. Now make these little marks to locate the big squares that we're going to put on either side. So at the top of the central square on either side, a little mark, and then again on the bottom trapezium on either side. Now at those 2 points of the hexagon in the center, you're going to pull out a curve going on in either direction. This will be where we locate the tusks. So let's begin by adding 2 circles across the midpoint of that square for the eyes, and bulge out to either side of that circle. So bulging out of the square edge. Now the elephant's head is made up of lots of snake type lines, wavy lines, and here is where we start with them. So above the eye you dip the line in and then back out again as you curve around the top corner of your square. Going back down to the hexagon point, you need to put a curve cutting off that hexagon point on either side, and above there again, using that curvy line, you're going to connect to the bulge just next to the eye. So using that snake or that wavy line again. So it bulges in and above and below the eye, and then bulges out. Now moving down to that hexagon, again we're softening those sharp edges. Like we said before with the giraffe, same thing. We are trying to soften all the corners and all the points into curves. And that will be the top of the mouth or the bottom of the face. Now let's turn these 2 long lines into a trunk by curving the bottom end of it up into the back end or the tip of the trunk, and it has this little grip on the end of it that it can pick up food with. Adding a little curve on the right hand side line coming in gives it the idea that it is curving underneath. Let's return back to those big curves that came out of our hexagon and turn them into tusks by drawing a second matching curve beside it and getting thinner towards the tip with a nice rounded end. Going back to the eyes, put a bracket around each eye, kind of like an eyelid around the eyeballs, and now we're going to work on our ears. So the ears curve again, so you're cutting off the outer corners of that large square, and see if you can go back and add a second curve like we did with the giraffe, but this time we run out about halfway along that curve. On the bottom edge of the ear we add some wrinkles using a bumpy line, and then we repeat on the other side as we draw the second ear. A curve for the top of the ear and a second curve about halfway as long, and then adding those bumps at the bottom of the ear. Let's add in the 2 front legs. These curve on either side of the trunk. They're located between the trunk and the tusks, and add a little gap between these 2 front legs, and then draw the back of the elephant. He has a really big fat bottom, and so we widen it out on either side of the tusk, but then bring it in towards the feet at the bottom. Right, let's move on to doing our drawing with the pen, the marker. We are going to confidently draw over our animal drawing, ignoring our structure shapes beneath. Again, if you've made any errors in structuring or in creating your drawing, ignore the errors and only draw with a marker over the lines you want to keep, the ones you want to emphasize. Sometimes the pen doesn't exactly match up with the pencil, and that's okay too. Here we go. Just finishing off the wavy lines on the face, and if you try and keep those wavy lines continuous without picking your pen up, it helps for it to look more organic and natural. Nearly there, just adding in the legs, and then we're going to start on the details. Right, so we're going to add some wrinkles to the forehead. Curve these lines or these wrinkles like a rainbow, but a very flat, shallow rainbow. It again adds to the illusion that the face is curved. It makes it look more three-dimensional. Continue those down the trunk. With the wiggly line at the bottom of each ear, use the tips inside those wiggly lines to guide the wrinkles and draw them up lightly, curving up towards the eye basically. Add two pupils into the eye and colour in with your marker the gap between the front legs just underneath the trunk. Moving back to our sketching pencil, with a medium pressure, shade around the curve outline of the face on each side and right up to where the ear starts. So just a very narrow band of shading along here, and then going down the one side of the trunk, not both sides, just down the one side, and then at the fold up of the trunk at the back, add more pressure and make that shadow much darker. Moving on to the tusks. In this case, you may need to turn your paper as you work to be able to work and to be able to curve the line of that shading so that it is going across the tusk. Just do a narrow band of shading again in medium pressure from the top right down to the tip, and then go back to where the tusk joins into the face and add some pressure and some darker shadows at that point, blending that into the lighter shadow. Again with the dark shading, using heavier pressure, you go back alongside the face or the cheeks on either side, and inside the ear you are shading with much more pressure all the way along to show that the ear is further back from the face. Take some of that shading up along the underside of the top of the earlobe. Do that on both sides. Again, watching out for the hands, picking up some of that pencil shading onto your hands. You may smudge that if you're not careful across your drawing. Do some medium shading again between those wrinkles that you drew inside of the ear flaps. So turn your paper around so that you are working on the opposite side in each of the ears, so the shadow is hiding behind the crease or the wrinkle. And add some more pressure as you draw, as you shade in on the back of the leg, or the back leg, or the back half of the elephant, to show again that that is further away from the viewer than the ears are. And then as you're going down lower, you can soften up on that pressure. Again, down underneath the tusk and the trunk and the face, the shadow that's being cast on the front legs, but a softer pressure this time because it is closer to us than the back legs are. Do that on both front legs. Nice soft pressure there. And then maybe just a little more pressure right against the trunk. Back onto the other side for the back legs, more pressure, making a darker shading and blending that out gently into a medium pressure on the rest of the legs. And there we go, elephant complete. Our third animal we're going to be looking at is our zebra. The zebra starts off similar to the giraffe with an oval for the locating the head. So draw in your oval. This time, instead of drawing a small circle near the bottom, we are going to draw a square, but a square that is cut through the center by this oval. So here we're locating the square for the muzzle. There we go. And while we are down here, we can add in the neck. The zebra has a shorter and much wider neck than the giraffe. So just up from the little square on the one side, draw a diagonal line going out from your page, and on the other side, aim to curve it a little bit if you can, not a lot, just a gentle curve. Then locate the center of the oval so you know where to begin the eye triangle. So draw 2 triangles pointing inwards, again just for locating the eyelids. Repeat with larger triangles above the eye on the either side for locating your ears, and then a small triangle in between those. Almost looks like a little unicorn horn, but that's where the mane is going to be located. So as before, when we start drawing in our details, we curve, we soften all of those geometric lines. This time do a double line on both sides of the ears, and inside of the ear line or the ear edge you can add some fluff. The zebra does have some fluff inside of its ears to help it with hearing. And same on the other side. Repeat a double outline for the ears, nice curves, and putting in a zigzag line. Point those zigzags upwards as you're adding them in. Now working on the forehead again, you are curving that around, and as you get to the eyelids, nice gentle curve, curve again and curve again, softening those pointy geometric angles. Add in the curve of the eyeball, and as you head down towards the square of the muzzle, again thinking about how you're going to narrow that down so that you can draw the jaw. Repeat on the other side, curving, curving, curving again, and then curving in away from the outline of the oval to create the more pointy jawline. Adding in the second eyeball, and at the top of the head we have the mane, so draw it in around that triangle that you put there with some tufts on the top. Let's move down to the square. It's a little bit tricky, this one. So we start with the outline of the nostril on the left, down to the lip, and then up to the top nostril on the other side, and close it with an arc along the top. Add those nostril outlines in, and add the lip in as well. The lip kind of lines up with the bottom of the oval. And the neck, very similar to the neck you would have structured in the beginning. And add the top of the mane following down from the top of the head. Right, let's add in some of his markings. The zebra is very well known for the markings he has. So by starting with a little rectangle above the nostrils, it will guide the mid marking. And the mid marking starts off wide by the nose, narrows in, widens up again, and then gets narrow as it gets to the top of the head. Draw 3 arcs on either side, working from the middle of the forehead down to the eyeballs. Draw 3 arcs on either side of the center, and then 4 little arcs I've got here coming off the side for the cheeks, 3 to 4. The marking that's on the neck will match the marking that is on the mane, so the mane curve in one direction opposite to the way it curves on the neck. By drawing those with a curved line, it makes the neck look 3-dimensional. And now with your marker and showing confidence in your drawing, add in your details. You can, because there's a little bit of black ink colouring in on these markings. You might find if you have a fatter marker than this one here, that you use this marker for outlining your drawing everywhere, and then going back with a fatter marker to colour in the darker sections, like inside the ears and then all of those stripes. The nose or muzzle is black on the zebra, and it's hard to be able to see the details, so a trick I've used here is to leave a very thin white gap between each section that I coloured in. Now back to our shading with our art pencil, and we're going to do some shading up the cheek on either side of the nostrils, starting off with medium pressure right up close to the black, and then getting softer as you're going closer to the top of the cheek, but darker the closer you get to the black, just increasing the pressure that you're pushing down on your pencil with. Now moving across here, sorry, I've turned the drawing around, so now we're working on the mane. See if you can follow the curve of the black markings with your pencil. By following that curve, it gives the illusion of fur, long hair or fur on the mane. As you head down closer to the join between the mane and the neck, you get darker with your shading, so more pressure, and just under the cheek there, the cheek would be casting a shadow onto the mane too. So more pressure, darker shading as the mane joins onto the neck. Try and blend the darker shading into the lighter shading by gently colouring over the two. Moving on to the neck here, continue that darker shading underneath the chin that's being cast onto the neck. And the same next to the join, or the join, right where the neck lines up with the mane. And lift the pressure off your pencil and colour lighter as you're getting away from the cheek or the head of the animal. So this helps it to look more three-dimensional, because it looks like the head is making a shadow or casting a shadow onto the neck, and makes the neck appear further away and the face closer. Gently, gently blending from the very dark shading out into the lighter shading. Continue down the edge of the neck and mane and add some of that darker shading in there again. Aim to colour in the direction of those black markings to again emphasize the curve of the neck. So rather than colouring straight up and down next to the black marker line, you're colouring at a 90-degree angle to that. And then pop over to the other side of the neck and do the same again. Notice the diagonal has changed here as we're colouring in and adding that appearance of curvature, of bending as the neck bends away from us. And finally finishing off at the top of the head here, we're adding a little bit of shading to the base of the ear, just the base here, to make it look like the tips of the ears are pointing forward. Here we go. Congratulations, you have finished 3 drawings of grazing animals that live on the African savannah. I hope you enjoyed making art with me today.